Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cap and Trade Show. I'm Texans Cap, and today we're talking about accrued seasons versus credited seasons. This is episode 15 of the NFL Salary Cap Explained series. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to the Cap and Trade Show. We're going to talk about credited seasons versus accrued seasons. A very important factor to know about when it comes to free agency and minimum salary and benefits and a few other key points that we'll kind of get into. But before we get into the slideshow, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you get your notifications set up for future episodes. So with that, let's jump over to the slideshow like we like to do. Okay, so we're getting the slideshow, accrued and credited seasons. Things to know. Those two types of season gains, so accrued and credited seasons, are based on games active per season and what's considered to be on full pay status versus split salaries, and there's different categories of how it all breaks down, but we're going to kind of get into each situation for accrued and credited, but is basically determined by the number of games on an active roster during a singular season. It can be calculated for minimum salary. So I'll show you a table of the minimum salary based on credited seasons, but a player's minimum salary is determined by the number of credited seasons they have thus far in their career. We have free agency. So to reach free agency and the different levels of free agency depends on the number of accrued seasons that a player has. Waiver validity. So if they're subject to waivers or not. Vested veterans are not subject to waivers. So a player needs to not be subject to waivers. They need to have 4 accrued seasons of experience. Veteran salary benefit. So this is based on credit seasons. They have to have 4 credit seasons to go through a veteran salary benefit. And we'll talk about that in a future episode. Then we have benefits. This is after the player's career is over. Pension, insurance, things like that. That's based on credited seasons. And practice squad status. So there's 3 different types of practice squad. There's the original practice squad player. There's exceptions. And then there's the vested veterans, which a team can only have 6 veterans on a practice squad, but that's based on the number of accrued seasons as well. So to be a veteran on a practice squad, you got to have at least 4 accrued seasons. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is credited seasons. So it's earned by a player who's on the 53-man active roster in full pay status for at least 3 games and 1 season. It doesn't have to be 3 games in a row. It just needs to be 3 games. Time cannot be earned while on reserve, while on injured reserve, non-football injury, non-football illness, or physically unable to perform, known as PUP. A player on reserve, whatever games are on reserve, does not count towards the credited season calculation. Now, if a player is on the practice squad and they get elevated to full pay for the week, like they're on the active roster through elevation, then that can contribute towards the credited season calculation. So if a player reaches their 3 maximum elevations for 1 season for 1 team, then they will have the minimum number of weeks on pay status to be able to gain a credited season for the league year. Now here's the salary cap breakdown table, or salary table breakdown. This is base salary, and I have it highlighted for 2025. And on the far left, you'll see the CS count. That's credited seasons count. So based on the number of credited seasons is the player's minimum salary. You can see how it increases based on the number of credited seasons for the player in this specific league year, 2025. So if they have 2 credited seasons, their base salary is $1.03 million. If they have 7 or more credited seasons of service, then they're at $1.255 million. And then it increases in subsequent years as well. But this is the base salary table for a player based on the credited seasons they have earned in their career in the NFL. Now we're going to talk about accrued seasons. It would be nice if they made accrued and credited not so tricky to say, but I digress. Accrued seasons is time earned by a player on the 90-man roster for 6 games. This can be earned while on reserve, but only on injured reserve and physically unable to perform reserve. If a player is on NFI reserve, does not count towards the accrued season calculation. If they're subject to waivers, if they have 3 or fewer accrued seasons. So if they have 4 or more, they're considered a vested veteran and they're not subject to waivers. Except for after the trade deadline, everybody's subject to waivers. During free agency, if a player has 4 or more accrued seasons, they are an unrestricted free agent at the end of their player contract. A player with 3 accrued seasons is a restricted free agent at the end of their player contract. And we'll go through the RFA tenders in a future episode coming up soon. Exclusive rights free agents are players with 2 or fewer accrued seasons at the end of their player contract. Those players only have rights to negotiate with the previous team. And then, like I mentioned, the veteran salary benefit needs to have 4 or more. So that's a quick rundown of how accrued and credited seasons are calculated and how they apply to a player in terms of the salary cap and their salary and free agency and benefits and things like that. So now you know when you see a player is released by their team and an NFL national media person will say, this player is not subject to waivers. They are immediately a free agent. Now you'll know why. Is because that player has 4 or more credited seasons. Or you see a player like we're seeing this week in the offseason leading up to the league year, a team has tendered their exclusive rights free agent for the 2025 season. That's because that player only had 2 or more accrued seasons of experience heading into free agency. So now you know about credited seasons, how it's calculated based on how many weeks in a regular season the players on full pay, and how that contributes to their minimum salary payments. And we looked at the minimum salary table, and then accrued seasons and how it's calculated for 6 games per season while on full or split salary, but they cannot be on NFI reserve, and how that contributes towards free agency, how it can contribute towards waivers, if they are subject to waivers or not, and if they're eligible for the veteran salary benefit. So some good things to take away from here. It's not really discussed too much out there on social media, but when it is mentioned, you'll know what they mean when you hear credited seasons or accrued seasons. So that is episode 15 of the NFL Salary Cap Explained series. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified when the next episode drops. We have a few more episodes left in this series, so stick around for the next one. We will see you there. Have a good one.